A story of silence. But listen closely. Connecting minds. Connecting from Africa for the world.
So guess what Burkina Faso's about to do? Release? Wait for it. 1.2 million rabbits. Yeah, you heard me right. Not tractors, not shiny new irrigation systems. Actual rabbits. And not the cute fluffy kind you keep as pets. No. These little fur balls are going straight into the middle of the freaking desert, into a giant oven made of sand where, honestly, even weeds are like, nah, I'm good. Now I know what you're thinking. Hold up, isn't this how Australia ended up with a rabbit disaster? Yep. And believe me, critics from Europe to America are already screaming ecological suicide and calling it the dumbest idea since someone put pineapple on pizza. Political commentators? Oh, they're loving it. Burkina Faso's gone mad. This is just a PR stunt. But here's the thing. For people living there, it's not about PR. It's not about getting a Netflix documentary. It's about not dying of drought. When the choice is do nothing or unleash an army of underground diggers, suddenly 1.2 million rabbits doesn't sound that crazy. Right now, the desert's been winning hard. Farms, gone. Wells, empty. Kids, they think green is just the color of a soccer jersey. And then there's this one guy who decides, screw it, let's try something no one's ever done before. Genius or madness? Honestly, I can't decide yet. But to figure that out, we need to meet the man behind this whole furry operation. And trust me, he's not what you'd expect. So who's the mastermind behind this million rabbit invasion? Meet Ibrahim Traoré. And no, he's not some eccentric billionaire with a weird hobby. He's the president of Burkina Faso. Yeah, the actual president, standing in front of cameras, looking dead serious, and basically saying, we don't wait for miracles, we create them. At first, everyone, even some of his own people, thought he was joking. Rabbits? In the desert? That sounds like the kind of thing you blurt out after your third cup of super strong coffee. But nope, this guy had a plan. And get this, it wasn't just pulled out of thin air. He and his team dug into real science. Like Australia has seen burrowing mammals turn dead soil into living grassland. In the US, prairie dogs have literally revived whole ecosystems. South Africa? Aardvarks digging for ants ended up leaving behind pits that collected water and let plants grow. Nature's been doing this for ages. Traoré just wants to do it on steroids. And by on steroids, I mean 1.2 million rabbits across 100,000 hectares. That's not a trial run. That's a full-scale invasion. Just, the fluffy kind. Think about it. If each rabbit digs even a couple of burrows a day, you're looking at a massive underground network in months. Water starts soaking in instead of running off. Roots can grow deeper. Microorganisms move in. And here's the kicker. Every rabbit's poop is packed with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Basically free organic fertilizer. They eat, they dig, they poop, repeat. All day, every day. And yes, I can hear someone in the back going, yeah, but what if they overpopulate? Relax, we'll get to that. But here's a question for you. If your country's land was dying, would you gamble everything on something the rest of the world calls crazy? Or would you just keep doing the same old safe thing that hasn't been working for decades? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm seriously curious where you stand on this. But before you judge, you need to understand exactly how these little digging machines could pull this off. And that's where the science actually gets weirdly impressive. All right, so, rabbits in the desert. On the surface, it sounds like the setup to a bad joke. A rabbit hops into the Sahara and says, but here's the thing. When you break down the science, it starts to make you go, huh, maybe this isn't so stupid after all. First, the biology. Rabbits are basically nature's tiny bulldozers. Strong back legs, sharp claws, and a natural instinct to dig like their lives depend on it, because they actually do. They build entire underground cities. We're not talking about random holes here. We're talking about connected burrows that act like an underground plumbing and ventilation system for the soil. Here's why that matters. Compacted, dead soil is like a brick. Rain hits it and just slides off. Plants can't grow deep roots, and microorganisms, the tiny life forms that keep soil healthy, can't survive. But when a rabbit digs, it cracks that brick open. Suddenly, water can seep in instead of disappearing. Oxygen can reach plant roots. Little critters can move in. It's like aerating your lawn, if your lawn was 100,000 hectares of desert. And then there's the poop factor. Yeah, it's funny, but it's also serious business. Rabbit droppings are loaded with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The same stuff farmers buy in big sacks labeled fertilizer. Except rabbits make it fresh and deliver it exactly where it's needed, underground, right next to plant roots. Let's talk cost. If Burkina Faso went the traditional route, deep plowing tractors, irrigation systems, chemical fertilizers, they'd be looking at hundreds of millions of dollars up front. Then you've got fuel, maintenance, spare parts, all imported, and labor costs. And when the budget runs out, game over. With rabbits, the initial investment is tiny by comparison, and, here's the wild part, your workforce reproduces for free. Yes, in this case, multiplying like rabbits is literally part of the business model. Now, this isn't just Traoré's wild idea. There's precedent. In Australia, ecologists protected burrowing mammals and saw dead land come back to life. In the U.S., prairie dogs, love them or hate them, are considered keystone species because their digging revives entire grasslands. In South Africa, aardvarks unintentionally improve soil health just by looking for food. Nature's been running this play for millions of years. Burkina Faso's just scaling it up in a way no one's dared before. From an American perspective, this feels a lot like regenerative agriculture, the whole work with nature instead of against it thing. In the U.S., we have ranchers integrating cattle and sheep to restore soil. Burkina Faso's doing the same thing, just with, well, fuzzier livestock. And yeah, there are risks. We'll talk about them soon. But here's a thought. What's riskier? Trying something unconventional that has a shot at working, or sticking with methods that have already failed year after year? So, what would you do? Play it safe or roll the dice with 1.2 million furry earth movers? Comment your vote. I'm betting this is one of those topics where nobody stays neutral. And speaking of nobody staying neutral, let's dive into the part where the critics come out swinging. And trust me, they've got some loud opinions. Oh boy. This is the part where the internet loses its mind. The moment Traoré announced the rabbit plan, the critics came out faster than, well, rabbits. Western media? Headlines like Burkina Faso's bizarre gamble and from dust to bunnies popped up almost instantly. Some political commentators even claimed this was just a flashy distraction from bigger national issues. You know, the classic bread and circuses argument, except here it's sand and rabbits. And let's be honest, the ecological critics didn't hold back either. They all shouted the same scary bedtime story. Remember Australia? In the 19th century, a handful of rabbits were introduced there for hunting. They multiplied into hundreds of millions, chewed through crops like a plague of locusts, and caused environmental damage that's still costing billions to fix. To this day, Australians have an entire chapter of environmental policy that basically reads, "Don't mess with rabbits." Now here's where it gets interesting. Traoré's team didn't just ignore that history, they studied it like their lives depended on it. This is not a dump the rabbits and hope for rain plan. It's a controlled rollout with strict population management. We're talking fenced zones, predator balance, even biological birth control if needed. And once a plot of land is restored, the rabbits get relocated or their numbers are reduced. No free-for-all, no bunny-pocalypse. They've even factored in microclimate management, planting fast-growing trees for shade so the rabbits can dig longer during the day without overheating. That's the kind of detail you don't usually hear in viral headlines. But here's the political twist. Some folks in Europe and the US basically said, why not just use modern machinery like everyone else? And Traoré's reply was the verbal equivalent of a mic drop. Because we don't have hundreds of millions to waste on imported steel that will break down, need spare parts from overseas, and bleed our budget dry. From my American point of view, this is like the Buy American slogan, but for survival. He's not just keeping the solution homegrown, he's literally using homegrown animals to fix the problem. So here's my question. If the world laughs at you for trying something new, do you stop? Or do you double down just to watch their jaws drop when it works? If your team prove them wrong, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. If you think this is going to backfire spectacularly, say that too. This is one of those debates where the middle ground is basically just sand. And while the arguments keep flying online, something's quietly shifting on the ground in Burkina Faso. And it's not just the sand, it's the people. Here's the part almost nobody talks about when they hear rabbits in the desert. This isn't just about soil and plants. This is about people. And in Burkina Faso, people have been losing the fight long before anyone thought about releasing a single bunny. Picture this. Every dry season, villages empty out. It's not because people want to leave, it's because they have to. Crops fail, cattle die, wells dry up. And when you can't feed your family, you pack up whatever you can carry and head for the city. Some make it to the capital, some cross into neighboring countries, and some never come back. By the way, this isn't just sad, it's expensive. Every farmer who leaves stops producing food. That means more imports. Imports means spending hard currency, which Burkina Faso doesn't exactly have piles of. It's a slow economic leak that never stops. Now, here's where the rabbit plan changes the game. This isn't just throw some animals out there and hope. The project creates jobs immediately. You need people to breed and care for the rabbits, build and maintain fencing, plant erosion-control trees, monitor water levels, and eventually, when the land recovers, harvest the crops. And we're not talking a handful of jobs here. The project estimates thousands of direct positions and even more indirect ones. That's thousands of families earning money without having to leave home. And when people spend that money locally, boom, you keep the village economy alive. Shops stay open, markets stay busy, kids stay in school. From my point of view, this feels like those Main Street revival projects you see in the US. The ones aimed at bringing life back to small towns so young people don't all move to big cities. The difference? In America, they might build a coffee shop and a farmer's market. In Burkina Faso, they're building an army of rabbits to turn sand into farmland. Honestly, I kind of respect the drama of it. But the real magic here isn't just economic, it's psychological. When people help restore their own land, they start believing in it again. A farmer doesn't just get told, "Hey, your soil's better now." He walks out to his field, digs his hands in, and feels that the earth is softer, richer, alive again. That's not something you can import in a shipping container. That's personal. And here's a little side effect I bet the critics didn't see coming. Pride. People in these villages aren't saying, "Some foreign project saved us." They're saying, "We did this ourselves." That kind of ownership doesn't just help the land, it rebuilds identity. So let me throw this to you. If your home was dying, would you wait around for someone from the other side of the world to save it? Or would you grab whatever tools or animals you had and start fighting back? If you're in that second camp, share this story right now. Because the more people hear about it, the harder it becomes for anyone to dismiss it as just another crazy idea. And speaking of ideas, wait until you see the future they're betting on. Spoiler, if it works, It won't just change Burkina Faso. It could redraw the whole map of the Sahel. All right, let's fast forward 5 years. It's 2030. You step out of a dusty pickup truck in northern Burkina Faso, and you have to blink twice because what you're seeing doesn't make sense. The air, cooler. The wind, carrying the smell of maize, peanuts, and beans instead of sand. The ground, green. Not everywhere, but enough that you have to remind yourself this used to be a wasteland. This is the vision. 80% of the 100,000 hectares restored. Fields producing food again, local markets packed with fresh crops. Wells that were dry for decades now filled to the brim. Kids splashing water on each other like it's a national sport. And here's the economic kicker. Burkina Faso, producing enough to cut food imports and maybe even export to neighbors. If you're thinking that's just a cute side benefit, think again. Less money spent on imports means more cash for roads, schools, clinics. You know, the things politicians everywhere like to promise but never have the budget for. Now here's where it gets spicy. Other countries in the Sahel are watching like hawks. Mali, Niger, Chad, all losing millions of hectares every year to the desert. If Burkina Faso pulls this off, you can bet they'll be taking notes. This could turn into a regional copy-paste strategy. And when we're talking about the edge of the Sahara, that's a lot of sand potentially being pushed back. From an American angle, it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. The U.S. Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Texas, is already battling water shortages and soil degradation. People are experimenting with regenerative agriculture, but most solutions cost a fortune. Imagine if you could do it with nature's own soil engineers working 24/7 for free. Prairie dogs already play a similar role in U.S. grasslands. If you've ever seen the transformation when they come back, you know it's dramatic. And here's the twist. This isn't just about Africa or America. Dust from the Sahara literally travels across the Atlantic to the Caribbean and even the U.S. East Coast. So yeah, what happens in Burkina Faso could literally end up in your lungs. Suddenly, their problem starts looking a little more like your problem, too. So let me ask you, if turning desert into farmland meant cleaner air, more food security, and maybe even slowing down climate change, would you back it? Or would you keep scrolling because it's not my country? If you're in the first camp, share this story. The more people know, the more this becomes something bigger than just Burkina Faso's crazy rabbit idea. But dreams and green fields are the easy part of the story. The real question is, will the rest of the world actually step up and help? Or just sit back and watch? Here's the thing. The Rabbit Army isn't just a quirky Burkina Faso headline. This is a live experiment the whole planet should be watching, because desertification doesn't care about your flag, your borders, or your politics. Let's zoom out for a sec. The Sahara alone swallows about 50,000 square kilometers of land every single year. That's roughly twice the size of Belgium, gone, every 12 months. Globally, we're losing fertile soil equal to the size of the UK every year. The UN estimates that the economic damage from land degradation is somewhere in the ballpark of $490 billion annually. And guess what? That bill doesn't stay in one country's mailbox. It's global. Now, if you could reverse even a fraction of that loss with a low-cost, nature-powered method, wouldn't you at least try? Especially when the alternative is billion-dollar climate solutions that take decades just to get through political arguments? From the American perspective, there's another angle. States like California, Arizona, and Texas already spend fortunes battling drought and soil loss. Farmers there are turning to regenerative agriculture, cover crops, rotational grazing, no-till farming. Traoré's plan? It's basically regenerative agriculture with 4 legs, big ears, and a digging habit. If it works in the Sahel, you'd be foolish not to at least test it in the Southwest. But here comes the debate. Should the international community get involved? Some say yes. Provide research support, funding, and monitoring. Others say no. Let Burkina Faso prove it first before any big investments roll in. And of course, there's the ever-present fear of foreign aid turning into foreign control. My take? If the world plays this smart, it could be the rare case of collaboration without strings attached. Share data, co-fund infrastructure like water reservoirs, help track ecological impact. But don't turn it into another project that collapses the moment the donor leaves. And here's where it gets personal. The dust storms from the Sahara? They travel thousands of miles. They cross the Atlantic. They land in the Caribbean and even on the U.S. East Coast. So yeah, this isn't just Burkina Faso's fight. Whether you realize it or not, you're breathing part of it. So let's make this interactive. If you think projects like this deserve global support, drop a comment saying, "Stand with the rabbits." And if you think every country should just fend for itself, tell me why. Because I promise, that's not as simple as it sounds. And before we wrap, let's zoom back in to one village, one family, and one story that shows exactly what's at stake here. Let's drop all the stats for a moment and just walk into a place called Gossi, a village up in the north. A few years ago, calling it a village was generous. The fields, empty. The wells, dry holes. The people, gone, except for a few elders too stubborn to leave. Then came the rabbits. Not overnight magic, no fairy tale. Just steady work, digging, planting, water catching. Fast forward 5 years and you can actually smell green here. The air feels softer. The wind carries the scent of maize and peanuts instead of hot dust. Meet Mariam, a farmer's daughter. She told me that back in 2019, her family was packing to move to the city because their cattle had died and the soil was as dead as stone. Now, they're harvesting enough food to feed themselves and still have leftovers to sell. The well near her house? It's full. Her younger brother, who used to spend half his day walking for water, now plays soccer in the afternoons. She laughed and said, "The land was never dead. It was just waiting for us to fight for it." That's what this whole thing comes down to. It's not just about land restoration or climate action. It's about ownership. Being able to say we brought this place back. It's about giving people the power to change their future without waiting for some international miracle that may never arrive. Now, yeah, I know there are still folks out there ready to pounce if this fails. They'll say, "See? Told you it wouldn't work." But you know what? That's the safe seat, the critic's chair. The people in Burkina Faso, they're not in that chair. They're out here in the sun, hands in the dirt, proving that the riskiest move isn't trying something new, it's doing nothing at all. So here's my last question for you. If you believe in fighting for your home, even when the odds look insane, are you willing to stand with them? If your answer's yes, share this story. Comment, "I stand with the rabbits." Tag a friend. Because if this works, it won't just be Burkina Faso's victory. It'll be proof that the world doesn't have to wait for permission to fix itself. And who knows? Maybe one day when you hear the sound of something digging under the ground, you won't think pest. You'll think, that's the sound of life coming back.